Alright, I'm going to do a quick video. Today is, well, I know it's Saturday and I've been sleeping most of the day. It's November 2nd, 2019, and I just wanted to say hi. I've got my sleep in. It's past 4 o'clock. Sometimes on Saturdays I sleep till 4 or 5 o'clock just to catch up on my sleep. And I need to get some catch up on my sleep, so there I am. Today I listened to, or actually watched some of Rudy's Brain Cancer Diaries videos. I would recommend that. Go to YouTube, search for Brain Cancer Diaries. You can't miss it. I made some iced coffee, nothing special. This isn't a Cancer Friends tea party. However, feel free to join me. We can make it one. Yeah, I'm just trying to prepare myself for more talks, interviews, whatever, appearances on podcasts, hint, hint. So today, now that I'm up, I'm going to do some reading. I've already watched a few videos. So on my plate, the National Comprehensive Cancer Network has a lot of nice booklets, whatever you want to call it, PDFs. And I'm going to read one on melanoma because I know people with melanoma. Hi, Liz. And I don't know anything about it. As most cancers, I try to learn a little bit about a different cancer whenever I can. I don't even know everything about my cancer, prostate cancer, though I obviously know more about that than any other cancer. So that's one thing I'm doing. And I found this it looks interesting. It's a paper I found online, or I don't know, it's the National Academy Press. It's an open book. This one's called From Cancer Patient to Cancer Survivor. And obviously I'm reading this all on my iPad. So you can read it free online. So I just, made a PDF of the page online. But I like this subheading. It's like From Cancer Patient to Cancer Survivor, Lost in Transition. And I think we all know a little bit about that, more than likely. I was just telling, someone, sorry, I don't always remember everything, how I always called the cancer center after my first year of being diagnosed and going through treatment. In my case, it was 2 years ago, right about now, when I started chemotherapy. It was docetaxel, or I think it's called Taxotere, whatever, that's the brand name, and Lupron, which is a hormone therapy, androgen deprivation therapy, or ADT. So that was 2 years ago, in November of 2017. Unfortunately, that was my first line meds, and they quit working in about 8 months last summer. So since then, we've switched to second line, which is a clinical trial. I'm very big in clinical trials. Sorry for the chemo brain here. It was another chemotherapy plus what they call standard of care. So in my case, second line therapy in the treatment plan that I have is called abiraterone acetate, or Zytiga is the brand name. And with the chemo, we took it together with the chemo. It was cabazitaxel. The brand name is Jevtana. And just like docetaxel, it was 6 cycles every 3 weeks. So I took about 15 weeks, I think. And again, that was from November to February. It was the exact same schedule as my first chemo. It was kind of weird. One thing I'll point out, a lot of people mix up cycle and round. I've had 2 rounds of chemotherapy. One round was end of 2017, which had 6 cycles, or 6. I went in 6 times for infusions. And then my second round was the next time I had a set of infusions. That was last November through February of this year. And again, 6 cycles. That makes up 1 round. And then again, the abiraterone acetate. So I'm done with chemo. And that and the abiraterone acetate has done a great job, because I know a lot of you know I've started with the PSA of 5,306 I was diagnosed in October of 2017. Generally, anything above 4 is bad, and also they take into account, if it doubles in a certain amount of time, that's also bad, even if it's lower. And it kind of depends on your age and a few other things. But 5,306 is incredibly bad, just horribly bad. And when I had a biopsy, which is interesting, they stick a little ultrasound scope up my butt, and then they did the biopsy, which was kind of like a air gun shooting needles into my prostate. And when I started, went in, the urologist, really great urologist, really good guy, and he said, "Wow, this PSA 5,306, we can almost, so I can guarantee you, you're going to have serious cancer." So typical biopsy is 12 needles. I can't what they call it. Sorry, I'm going live here. I'm not. The chemo brain's still a thing. Talk about this some other time. So anyway, we had 12 samples, 12 cores. That's what they call it. 12. Actually, I had 14 cores. We had 2 extra for some reason. And even though we had the ultrasound kind of guiding the doctor where to shoot the needles, that thing was weird. It's, sometimes you're just hunting, hitting back, because the cancer could be anywhere in your prostate. It might just be one little small section. You take 12 cores and you totally miss it. Well, that's actually a false negative, because it says, hey, there's no cancer in your prostate, but there actually is. You just didn't happen to find it because you're kind of guessing. But in my case, being such high PSA and the fact that we did the MRI or the ultrasound, gave me a pretty good chance. So anyway, I came back. I had all 14 cores, had cancer, a lot of cancer. And there's a thing called the Gleason score. And it has to do, I should have looked this up before I did this, but I hadn't planned on doing this. It has to do with the cells in the samples and the differentiation between the most common cell they see in there and the next most common cell. So really there's nothing lower than a 3 and a 3, which equals a 6. Just everything's kind of the same. The higher your Gleason score, which can go up to a 10, is the absolute worst. Mine was a 9, and then you can break that up, a 7 and a 9, in 2 different ways. You have a 4 plus 5, which means the most common cell was 4 away from being a normal cell. And the 5 was just 5 cells away from being normal. So it's really, 5 is as bad as you can get on one of the numbers. So mine was 4 plus 5. I'm sorry, mine was 5 plus 4. So I was 1 step away from a 10. Like I said, all 14 cores had a lot of cancer. So when I saw my pathology, I actually looked at it, and truthfully, it looked like almost all my cores were 10s. I'm not sure how I got a 9, but I'm not the doctor, and I'm not the pathologist and all that. So anyway, it was bad. Very aggressive, high volume. And so that's why in the new standard of care for something that advanced and high volume like that is to go straight to chemotherapy, which is what we did, as I mentioned. Chemo plus Lupron, quit working in about 8 months. And really, the chemo, I had it for 4 months. So it was the Lupron, the androgen deprivation therapy, the hormone therapy, that was keeping my PSA down. My PSA dropped from over 5,000 all the way to 22, and 22 is still incredibly elevated, but compared to 5,000. But then it started going back up. So the next time I went, it was like 30 something, and 40 something, and 50 something. So it almost doubled in 3 months, and plus it was going back up. So what that meant is my Lupron or hormone therapy had quit working. So the hormone therapy lowers the amount of testosterone your body produces, and because the prostate cancer in a man is it feeds on testosterone. So with Lupron, and I don't have the actual term, or the type of therapy that is, but it stops the production of testosterone in your testes. I think it was signals something in your pituitary gland. Actually, I think something before your pituitary gland. It tells your pituitary gland to tell your testes stop making testosterone. And so when your testosterone goes below 10, and I think for normal testosterone for a man is like 200 something plus. When it goes below a 10, that's considered castrate level. Basically, it's it's a chemical castration similar to Alan Turing has a very similar drug. In fact, the effect and the side effects are all the same no matter how it's done. And there are a lot of side effects with that. So what had happened is, even though my testosterone or my testes were not producing testosterone, my cancer figured out how to make its own. And hence, then you become what's called testosterone or castrate resistant. And when you're castrate resistant, that means that even though you're at a castrate level testosterone wise, you are still producing testosterone. So I joined a clinical trial, and that was a year ago. And this was another chemotherapy, and it had to be after you'd taken docetaxel. You had to take that first, which I'd done. So this time it was cabazitaxel and another hormone therapy drug, again called abiraterone acetate. Everybody knows it as Zytiga. It does a little more than Lupron does. It actually does one thing that Lupron did was to tell your testes basically to stop making testosterone. But about 10% of your testosterone comes from your adrenal glands. And so the Zytiga actually stops it stops the adrenal glands from producing testosterone, and it also stops the cancer from producing testosterone. And I've had great luck with that. So when I went in with this clinical trial, my PSA was at 55. After one session, one cycle, I went in 3 weeks later to get checked, and my testosterone, or my PSA had gone down to 7, which is incredible. And then the next time, like a 2, and ever since then it's been below 1. And it kind of goes back and forth between 0.1 and 0.2. It's very, very good. And I'm very happy about that. With hormone therapy, though, it will quit working. That's just the way it is. And cancer will get smart and start producing its own testosterone to get around the medication. Typically, you get 9 to 18 months. I got that number from my oncologist. I've gotten 12 months so far, so I'm very happy about that because I really didn't get the full time I should have gotten with Lupron. Some guys get 2 to 5 years. I got 8 months. And I still take Lupron, even though it's not effective against my cancer. You still want your testosterone to be as low as possible for whatever medications you're taking after that. It doesn't need to fight lowering your testosterone level. So it still lowers my testosterone level. Like I said, it's castrate resistance when I have a low testosterone level, but my PSA and cancer keeps growing. So really, that's kind of where I am now. I go in at the end of the month. I have bone scans, CT scan. Of course, we'll be doing labs. So I'll find out. It's been stable the last 3 or 4 times in, including the scans. No progression with the metastases. And I have metastases down my complete spine. I forget what the top part of your arms are called, but I got it in both top parts of both arms. Ribs, everywhere in my ribs. My spine on a bone scan is completely black. So if you've seen a bone scan, black is bad. Well, mine is just like a big black highway. And it's in my femur, I think. That's the top part of your legs, in both femurs. And it's also in my pelvic region. And then on top of that, I have nerve damage, sciatica, and peripheral neuropathy, mostly in my feet and legs. And it kind of goes up sometimes. And sometimes my hands, but mostly it's my feet that suffer the most. Sometimes they're burning hot, sometimes they're freezing cold. Sometimes they're freezing cold, but they feel hot inside, and it's just, and sometimes they're tingly, you know, pins and needles. Lots of the people describe it. So I take other medicine for that. In my case, it's gabapentin, and I take the maximum dosage daily for that. I also take I think it's an antidepressant called Cymbalta or duloxetine, and it also helps with nerve damage. And so anyway, that's what I'm doing. So I'm doing some reading. I didn't get to the other things I'm reading. That's why I'm on here. So I like to read a lot of books that I probably have no business reading because they're above my head. So anyway, I got a book from Amazon, Advances in Cancer Survivorship Management. I think this one may be more towards lay people, at least for office staff. It's not necessarily for doctors. And then I have another one. Management of castration-resistant prostate cancer, which is what I have. And I believe this one's going to be more for doctors. So I haven't looked at that yet to see what kind of language they use as far as vocabulary and scientific knowledge and all that. So anyway, it is November 2nd, 2019, having a cold coffee, and y'all have a good one.